Good evening, I'm Wendy Mesley, and this is The National. A tumultuous week comes to a climax. First Nations divided over a meeting with the Prime Minister.
Matthew Kuhncum went in! He should have never did that!
In Ottawa and across the country, we capture a day of hope and anger. Did anyone get what they wanted? This is it. All week we've been counting down to today's meeting between First Nations leaders and the Prime Minister. But this was much more than a get-together. It's about the past, present and future of this country. The past is largely symbolized by the Indian Act, and there's a growing demand to reinvent it. However, the relationship is not just about historic issues, but current problems, conditions on reserves, control over resources like water, and self-government. And the future, personified by Idle No More, is young. About half of Canada's Aboriginal population is under 25, and that group is growing rapidly. So today, all eyes were on that meeting with the Prime Minister. Senior correspondent Terry Malewski leads our coverage tonight. Terry.
Well, Wendy, the build-up to this meeting may have been huge, but the outcome is modest. It amounts to a continuing high-level dialogue between the two sides, which may not be enough to quiet the more militant voices.
Move back.
The day began with a rare statement after a month of living on fish broth from Chief Spence of Attawapiskat. She insisted that today's meeting was no good without the Governor-General, but as she listed the issues, she was heckled about an embarrassing audit of her own band.
And revenue sharing. You know, like
where did the money go, Thief Teresa?
We share the land.
No questions.
We share the land. We share the land all these years, and we never got anything from it.
Later, Spence did refer to the audit, saying the band's money went back to taxpayers and paid for contractors, lawyers, consultants.
Consultants. That's where the money goes.
Why no questions?
No.
But Spence took no questions and returned to her teepee while her supporters joined a large protest on Parliament Hill. The mood of the marchers was determined and uncompromising.
We stand with Chief Spence. And when she said, no meeting without the Governor-General, no meeting without our people, she meant it. What are you afraid of, Harper?
Some hardliners are planning more protests and blockades next Wednesday, the 16th, and it could get rough.
We will also go on a massive campaign to be able to inform investors, both domestically and internationally, that unless they get our consent to be able to come into our territories, that their investments are not safe.
But not everyone is a hardliner. Despite signs saying divided no more, the fact is that Canada's First Nations are divided over today's meeting. Chiefs from Manitoba and Ontario refused to attend it, but those from the rest of the country did.
I didn't come here just to protest.
The senior chief from Quebec said it didn't matter whether the Governor-General was there or not.
I respect the people that want the Governor-General to be present. But in this country, our Constitution was already patriated. And no Prime Minister would give his executive powers to a Governor-General.
Matthew Kuhncum went inside, and 3,000 of them broke our hearts.
On the doorstep of the Prime Minister's office, protesters shed tears as leaders like Matthew Kuhncum and National Chief Shawn Atleo agreed to participate.
We're being told that National Chief is coming. You should go and tell him not to come.
It didn't work. The meeting went ahead and a process was agreed to keep the work going.
The Prime Minister agreed to a high-level dialogue on the treaty relationship and comprehensive claims.
Now, for some of the chiefs, such a dialogue counts as progress. But the government is not budging on the omnibus bills that the chiefs want scrapped. Tonight, many of them went to a ceremony with the Governor-General, but whether things now calm down or heat up is, like so much else about this episode, not clear at all, Wendy.
Thanks, Terry. Terry Malewski in Ottawa tonight. So you saw protesters who tried to stop today's meeting. Well, on Parliament Hill today, there were many Aboriginal voices who wanted to be heard. We asked Laurie Graham to spend the afternoon among them.
There may not have been unity among the chiefs today, but in this crowd, about 3,000 deep, a united voice.
We're just hoping that our natural resources will be here for generations to come.
I want to make sure that my son has, you know, a bright future, and his kids, my grandchildren, and just to protect our Mother Earth.
As drummers played, people stood for hours in the cold, respecting the barricades that prevented them from entering the Parliament buildings, respecting one another.
Are you feeling the love?
There's anger and frustration in this crowd, but after talking to people, many also feel a tremendous amount of pride.
People who thought that they didn't have a voice or had anything to say, and now they can see that they do.
For Dan Deliri, an emotional day.
I do this for my kids. I do this for my ancestors.
As the hours passed, the mood stayed positive. People from different First Nations, often with different agendas, joined hands to form a round dance. Many say the largest they've ever seen.
We're expressing the fact that we're going to work together even though there is dissension, that we're still all Indians and we stand together.
Together and clearly determined. Lori Graham, CBC News, Ottawa.
At the heart of these protests is a demand that Canada honour the commitments made when this country was founded. Today, a statue of Sir John A. Macdonald, Canada's first Prime Minister, was the target of vandalism. Workers moved in quickly to clean up the mess. No one claimed responsibility for defacing the statue, but the Idle No More movement did declare this a day of action across the country. And not only was there action, but also reaction to what was going on in Ottawa. Chris Brown has that part of the story tonight from Vancouver. Chris.
Well, Wendy, they're capping this day with a strong show of support here in the heart of central Vancouver, blocking the intersection of Burrard and Robson. For many sympathetic to the movement, today began with a sense of uncertainty, but also of potentially momentous events.
In Dartmouth, Nova Scotia, Idle No More supporters such as Rebecca Moore greeted the new day with optimism for the big meeting in Ottawa.
I wish I could be there. I just don't know what to expect, really. But I'm just hoping for the best outcome.
In Winnipeg, they marched symbolically to the new Museum of Human Rights.
I hope it's successful. I know it's only the beginning. I brought my grandchildren with me. I think it's important that they take part in this.
There's probably not going to be a time like this in a long time.
And yet, along with all the hope for peaceful change articulated today, there were also explicit reminders of the potential for trouble.
I think he's scared. I think he's scared that Indians were actually standing up now.
Those words aimed right at Stephen Harper, and that threat to take Idle No More beyond words and peaceful gatherings echoed on the other side of the country in BC with Deborah Thomas of Kamloops. You would support a blockade of something like that?
You bet I would. You bet I would, because you know what? He's not God. You know, he's our Prime Minister, but he's not God.
As the meeting began in Ottawa, first reaction on the street that National Chief Shawn Atleo decided to attend appeared to go over well with the Vancouver crowd.
Someone had to deal with Stephen Harper, and I'm glad he went in. Because if he didn't go in, there'd be no talk, there'd be nothing happening.
As they marched to City Hall, word broke that the Prime Minister stayed for the entire length of the Chiefs meeting, and Karina Ross of Haida Gwaii was pleased.
He's actually stayed. Wow.
Is that good?
Still, well, it can be. But then again, is he really listening and hearing what he's being told?
Some saw the eagle flying over the Vancouver gathering as a positive omen. After the meeting broke, news that there'd be more talks with the Prime Minister ahead was interpreted as modest progress.
I feel that maybe we've got the public's attention.
We're going to wait and see. We can't really say anything that, that actually means anything unless some action is actually taken.
And talking to many out in the crowd here tonight, the sense does seem to be that progress, while minimal, at least represents a start. Wendy.
Thanks so much, Chris. One of the major players at today's meeting was the National Chief of the Assembly of First Nations. Shawn Atleo joins us from Ottawa. So, National Chief, it sounds like some progress was made today. You've got the ear of the Prime Minister, but do you still have the confidence of your people?
The meeting today was an opportunity to put forward really 8 key points that First Nations are seeking for fundamental change, the backdrop of which is the rally of our people, and their voices will not be silenced. Tremendous urgency and a tipping point that we're at. Calls for treaty implementation. There has been no mandate. Changes to comprehensive claims, that is how the land question is negotiated. There's been no mandate on that. The Prime Minister committed at the highest level and out of his office, as well as to ensure that the proper mechanisms are placed, including with Privy Council office, that there must be a fundamental change. And he is committed to talks at the highest level to get on with that work. This is something that chiefs have been calling for a long time, and it will require incredibly challenging work that does relate to a shared commitment with the Prime Minister to pursue resource revenue sharing, the lifting of our people out of poverty, and to address legislative challenges in the major bills like C-45 that were passed under the guise of making it easier to develop resources.
But you did not, excuse me, but you did not have the mandate of all of the leaders of your community. So I'm wondering, how do you put that back together? And have you been the victim of an attempt at a mutiny here?
The meetings that we had here were chaired by Regional Chiefs Perry Bellegarde with responsibilities for treaty as a portfolio area, as well as Jody Wilson-Raybould from British Columbia, responsible for comprehensive claims.
But many senior chiefs did not attend and didn't want you attending.
So the mandate that we have, as was expressed just last week, full consensus from our entire executive was to push for a meeting on the 24th. We then met directly with Chief Spence and understood differently than what we had before, that she wouldn't stop her hunger strike until a meeting actually occurred, which compelled us to push for one as early as possible,
so
which resulted in today. So you don't think there's a problem? You
think you're united again?
We have full consensus on the substance of the issues that were pressed fully today by the delegation that went to the Prime Minister. It's going to require real work to follow through, but we have now a highest level mandate from the Prime Minister. I cannot understate that the voices of our people have helped create the level of urgency that only a fundamental transformation between First Nations and Canada, led by the Prime Minister, will allow us to see the potential that the door is now open.
We are out of time. Thank you so much for making room. Such a big day, so much at stake. Thank you. National Chief Shawn Atleo.